Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to a look at the nominees for Planet F1's Driver of the Season. Now, I'm joined by Dan to discuss some of the nominees and how we think they performed in 2018, and then after that, it is all down to you. You can vote for your Driver of the Season by following the link in the description. That will take you over to planetf1.com, and your 7 nominees are Lewis Hamilton, Kimi Raikkonen, Max Verstappen, Nico Hulkenberg, Fernando Alonso, Charles Leclerc, and Pierre Gasly. So I think the obvious one to start with, Dan, is the world champion Lewis Hamilton. I think if we're being completely honest, a pretty faultless season all round.
Oh, he's been brilliant this year. I've been thoroughly impressed with him. I actually think it's probably been his best ever year in Formula One. I know that's quite a statement. I'm not going to lie. It is quite a statement, but I've been thoroughly impressed with him. And the stats, I know you've got plenty of them, really back him up this year. A difficult start, not going to lie, difficult start, but the second half, since that summer break, once again, he has smashed it.
It's weird, isn't it, talking about his difficult start to the season, those first 4 races, because they do include 2 podiums and a win. I mean, that's not the most awful of starts, but it was more about his demeanour at the time, wasn't he? He wasn't as chipper almost as he's usually been. He wasn't his usual self, if that makes sense. I think that's where we kind of get this idea from, that he wasn't on top form, but certainly since, I would say, Spain, if you put aside the 5th place in Canada and the retirement in Austria, he's just been unstoppable.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect way of summing it up. And then that 4th place in Mexico, the only time he wasn't on the podium apart from those 2, that's when he got the championships. So really impressed with Lewis Hamilton this year, for sure. Since Silverstone, 11 races, 8 wins. I mean, he really is a legend. And I think I'm only just starting to realise that now. And after this year, yeah, I can see him going for those 7 world titles.
What's astonishing this year for me is it's 17 podiums from 21 races and 11 wins, and people have got the nerve to say he was gifted the championship. I mean, even if you give Vettel a win in Germany, for example, and maybe another win towards the end of the season, that still swings very much Lewis Hamilton's way. And his performances, not just in terms of victories, but his consistency to land those podiums, worst finish of the year being 5th place, is how he's won that title. And I don't know if I'd make him my driver of the season, if I'm being completely honest, and I know I'm probably going to get some stick for that one, but more because he's not done anything I wouldn't expect him to do, if that makes sense. You look at Lewis Hamilton, you look at that Mercedes, the car they've got, you kind of expect them to turn up and challenge. I mean, some may know which way my vote is going to go, but that doesn't take anything away from what Lewis Hamilton has done this year.
Yeah, 100% I agree. Still not sure if he's my top pick, but I think in terms of qualifying, yeah, he's been brilliant. Racing, he's been consistent all year long. He's definitely one of the front runners for my vote.
Absolutely. And another man we've got to discuss, we can call him a man now, I think 21 years old, is Max Verstappen. Now, if we're talking the first 6 races, really, maybe push aside the Spanish Grand Prix, I think the stat that people like to throw around is 6 incidents in his first 6 races. And that put a lot of pressure on him at the start of the season. But since Canada, maybe even you could argue since the race in Monaco, because he did get a lot of overtaking done after starting down the back of the field to end up 9th, the turnaround in his season has been something that I've not seen for a while, and something that I'm so pleased he's managed to do.
100% agree once again. I mean, after those first 6 races, he was miles behind not only his teammate, but even the likes of Bottas, who'd had a difficult start, Raikkonen, who hadn't had the best start. He was miles behind all of them. And I was thinking, oh dear, Max, you've blown it at this point. The car isn't terrible. Then he gets that win in Austria. His form just completely flips around, ends the season in 4th place. I mean, 2 points off 3rd. That is incredible. That is one of, like you say, one of the best turnarounds we've seen for a very long time in Formula One. And it's been such a maturing year for him. Again, I think similarly to Hamilton, I think this has been his best year in Formula One, if you take away those first 6 races.
For me, I found this quite a pivotal season for Verstappen, because before this year, I was never sure whether he could handle the pressure. But with everything that was put on him after those first 6 races, even from his own team, for him to then be able to turn the season around like he has and mature as the season's gone on, in my view, is a huge step and a huge achievement, not only for 2018, but for him moving forwards. And now people are starting to talk again about this guy who could be a multiple world champion and maybe challenging if Honda get it right in 2019. And that's something that's always been there. But now that we've seen that he can get over these mistakes, can put these issues behind him and deal with the pressure from fans, from pundits, from teams, it's almost like he's grown to another level. And as well, very briefly on Verstappen, it's not just his turnaround since Canada, but his form since the summer break He's only failed to finish on the podium twice, and that was Italy and Russia, where we expected Red Bull to struggle. And he could have had, and some would argue should have had, at least one more win before the end of the season, which would have taken his tally to 3, something that I wasn't expecting. That would have been 5 wins for Red Bull this year, and I was not expecting that.
No, I think maybe in the winter when there was those rumours floating around that Red Bull could really challenge, then in Australia, they seem to be nowhere once again. So even them as a team, it's been nice to see them actually have quite a competitive car this year. Yes, he should have got that win in Brazil. I think that's fair. And again, I wouldn't fully pin the blame on Ocon. I know that's done and dusted now. So I think there's still little bits of immaturity there, but definitely he's made massive strides this year.
He's definitely matured in 2018, and one guy who has been an absolute revelation this year is Charles Leclerc, the other guy we're going to talk about. I feel like we talk about him all the time, Dan, probably a little bit too much in some people's eyes, and maybe we're running out of things to say on him, but what a rookie season he's had.
I didn't expect this. No one expected this except Jonty's corner. That was a fluke. He fluked that guess. But wow. I mean, those first 3 races he did wasn't really on it. 13th, 12th, 19th. Looked as if he was going to be not necessarily a flop, but not jump straight into F1 and deliver straight away. Then we get to Azerbaijan, gets that 6th, and from there on, it almost looks like he hasn't looked back. I mean, of late as well, 3 7th places to round off the season. What a year. Really deserves a chance in that Ferrari next year. I think already, just after 1 year in Formula One, the talent he's shown this year and the season he's had this year, I think tees him up beautifully next year. So really impressed with his season.
See, I expected him to be good because having watched him through his junior career and in F2 in 2017, he was brilliant and I knew he was going to be good, but I did not expect, I'm with you, I did not expect him to be as fantastic as he has been. And, you've talked about his rocky start there, but you have to remember, at his age, to then recover from that so well and to grow from that, a little bit like we're saying from Verstappen, but he's got a few years on Leclerc in terms of his Formula One experience, but his racecraft has been excellent for a driver in their first season, but also the way he's handled himself, that pressure. He's very much a mature head on young shoulders, and that very much says it all. And let's not forget, 12 months ago, he was collecting his F2 title trophy. Now he's a Ferrari driver, and frankly, that is thoroughly deserved.
Yeah, in theory, he's still in his rookie year. If I'm being totally honest, like you, I saw him in Formula 2, thought he was brilliant. Sauber last year weren't great, but he's completely flipped that whole dynamic around. He's driven the team forward this year, so completely unexpected. And as well, just a note on King Marcus of Ericsson, he's blown him away. And Ericsson, with his years of experience, isn't the worst driver on the grid. So for sure, he's going to do great things. And this season was brilliant.
I think we're all agreed, aren't we, on Charles Leclerc, that we just can't wait to see him in that Ferrari in 2019. But one other driver I wanted to talk about, picking out from that list, is Nico Hulkenberg. On the face of it, I feel like he's slid under the radar a little bit. It's kind of when I look at his results, but consistency is the best way to sum him up this season, and that is what has delivered that 7th place in the championship and helped Renault to take 4th. So best of the rest for him and best of the rest for Renault. I think he deserves a lot more credit than he seems to be getting, but I think with these Charles Leclerc's and Max Verstappen's performances and everybody talking about Pierre Gasly, I think he's kind of got lost a little bit in all of that.
I've been really impressed with him this year. He's been a driver I've always really enjoyed watching. And I know at the beginning of the year, I remember vividly in China thinking he was driver of the day, never even got a look in. For multiple races this year, he's performed so well. But say a Daniel Ricciardo's come from the back and he's won driver of the day, Hulkenberg's maybe finished in a P6, goes under the radar. So I think that's a perfect way of putting it. But he has been so good this year. 7 retirements, that's something that's really not noted. And yet Hulkenberg is still a comfortable amount of points in front of Sergio Perez. So an underrated pick, a bit of an underdog, you could say. But I've loved him this year. Again, another really strong pick.
It's interesting you say that about Perez, actually. He's had 5 fewer retirements than Hulkenberg, and Hulkenberg's 6 points up the road. So, I mean, that kind of tells you everything you need to know about him this season. But there are other nominees as well. They're just the 4 that we picked out. Kimi Raikkonen, Fernando Alonso, and Pierre Gasly, as I said at the start. So, Dan, I guess the question is, if you go off to vote, who are you voting for as your driver of the season?
I'm not a fanboy, but I will be voting for Lewis Hamilton. I think he's been that good this year. That's who I'm voting for.
Well, I'm going to disagree, and I think it will come as such a surprise to everybody listening right now, but I'm going to go with Charles Leclerc. For me, I thought he was going to be good, but I didn't expect him to be as good as he has. And to finish the season as strongly as he has, in a car that is midfield, yeah, you could argue the Sauber, as we'll talk maybe tomorrow about, did end up as best of the rest. But to perform the way he did towards the end of the season, I think speaks volumes about him, and he did everything he could to secure that Ferrari drive, so he's my driver of the season. But as ever, they were just our thoughts and our opinions, but it is all down to you guys. Who is your driver of the season? You can vote for either Lewis Hamilton, Kimi Raikkonen, Max Verstappen, Nico Hulkenberg, Fernando Alonso, Charles Leclerc, or Pierre Gasly by following the link in the description down below. That will take you to Planet F1. That vote closes on Saturday, December 8th, and we will be revealing the results together on Monday, December 10th. Now, Dan and I will be back tomorrow with the nominees for Team of the Season. But in the meantime, you can follow me over on social media. Links to Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and to Discord are all in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word. And until next time, goodbye.